take a soul breeze or something. Never hear it.
Because we got a lot today, and so I want to make sure we get started. Welcome. Are we recording? Thank you. Okay, welcome to the SBAC 2 meeting for March 3rd. We'll start with approval of minutes. Is there a motion to March 10? Thank you. Do I have the wrong? Yes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? It's unanimous, motion passes, thank you. Where we are in the process?
Yeah, let's see. Oh. Get that. We will bring up the PowerPoint here. Yeah. Be all set now? Oh, yeah, there we go. Sounds good. Works. There we go. Look at that, working. All right, well, tonight you have the deputy, not sheriff, so, but you all seem to be doing well with 1 hour less sleep, and at least we have a lot more daylight, so that's all for the positive here. We'll see how we're all doing after a couple more hours. So, we've already done, on the agenda, we've already done welcome and approval, and so moving on to where we are in the process. So, our overall schedule hasn't really changed, but we are looking at a couple of things. So here we are, March 10th already. And we are on, right now, the schedule is another meeting on the 17th before we have preferred options on the 25th. And so, and then we're going to suggest another slide here, how that might shift a little bit here. And then we have the survey in the month of April, but what we're suggesting is looking at, right now, the focus we're going to look at is the results of the survey, which you're all aware of tonight. And then on the 17th, next meeting, look at a discussion of how to reduce down to 2 options. And then the consideration is, do we move the joint meeting with the town council and the school board to April 2nd for the project update, and then also shifting out the community forum to the 8th. And so those are just a couple of proposed modifications to the schedule. And I will pause for a minute. Is there any additional feedback?
Yeah, so we did vote on this last week, so those are all good. And I think I heard back from the council that the 2nd is going to work for that joint workshop, right?
Excellent. We'll update the bubble schedule that we've done so that it reflects these updates.
Thank you.
Good. And next we have building committee leadership updates.
Yeah, so I think, outside of those schedule changes, the big update really is from Thursday's BOE session. And so I'll let our BOE reps give us an update on that discussion and the prioritization of the parking.
So, I mean, the board talked at length about all of these and ultimately felt that there weren't items on that list of things that could just be eliminated or one over the other. I think everybody recognized that we're not going to get everything we want, but also there's some concern over most of that is pretty necessary. So yeah, so I think that there's nothing on there that's frivolous, and people were trying to articulate that. So, but I do think that there was general consensus specifically around the 6th grade portables. Those are a big concern. They're also at the end of their life, and really a security concern. So I know that there was a lot of consideration given to that. I think the board would like to see a solution that does have that as a priority. And most of our projects do call that out. I think you know, the bigger question is, are we doing this as one solution or is it going to be broken up? And I think that will be something that this committee grapples with ultimately. Overall, the board just felt like, you know, gosh, there's some legal requirements here, safety requirements. I mean, there's nothing on there that's particularly frivolous. And so we, as a whole, would like the best possible solution. And I think everybody on this committee wants that as well. So there was no prioritization of one through whatever was on that list. Just to say the best possible solution. And I know that's what we're all aiming for anyway. Anything?
Yeah, I think the only other two things that got some highlighted points were the specific concerns around making sure that the schools ultimately had security vestibules when entering the buildings. That needs to be prioritized. That had a bit of discussion around it, and additionally, that it would be really challenging to support anything that took away our current playground space. We're the recipients of the Molly grant, the Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative, and to receive something like that and then take away outdoor space would be a challenging feat. So that was one thing that had also brought up discussion. I think other than that, yeah, what Jillian said.
So I'll just kind of close with, we asked them, you know, first off, thank you guys. I know that was a tough ask and a tough discussion for you. But at the end of the day, right, we asked for guidance. And while it might not have been as granular, the guidance may not be as granular as we had hoped for, it's still guidance, right? And so I'm satisfied with, you know, okay. And the Board of Education should want the most complete solution they can get. So I think that that's fine. We will take that input, and I know we're gonna see a graphic here in a little bit that Emily's been working on of kind of, you know, how do we get from 5 to 2? What are the inputs we're gonna look at, right? So now we've got some guidance from the board. We're gonna look at survey results today. We have a benchmarking. We have some cost estimates and things like that. And so we'll take all of those into consideration as we kind of rack and stack these against those different things. And so, while it may not have felt as satisfying as maybe we had hoped, I still think it's good guidance. It's fine. That's what the, you know, what the board was asked us to solve for. So at least we know that. Before we move on, any comments on that? Sue?
What would happen if we make a proposal, if we narrow it down and what we are recommending, the Board of Ed doesn't approve? What happens then?
Well, that's uncharted water. I mean, I don't know. Watching Kate's process, which I know you have, I think there were some missteps there that led to a sort of a spiral down. I think that the board might feel similarly if a project came forward that was highly divided, wasn't, you know, well supported by the committee. Maybe we would turn it, I don't know. I mean, I hope we don't find out.
Yeah, I mean, after watching that, that portion of the meeting, my feeling was that, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the number one requirement for this project is that we figure something out that we all think will pass at Rev Rent. And that there will be compromises. Things are not going to be perfect. And because we can't, you know, we can't have a $200 million project going to it, or even 160. I mean, anyway, and I really didn't get that sense from the Board of Ed. And I know legally they are required they can only think about the students. That's their only thing that they need to consider. They don't need to consider the taxpayers or the willingness of the taxpayers or ability of the taxpayers to pay the bill. And so, and that's potentially a conflict with what we are thinking about, so.
Well, and I think it's a great point, Sue, and I think that, you know, it highlights the work we've got to do over the next couple of months, right? Because I certainly, we heard what we heard on Thursday, right? I don't want to recommend a proposal that we don't think the board would support. And I also don't want to recommend a proposal that we don't think the voters will support. And so that's why we've been iterating over these options so much, is to try to find those points of compromise. And despite, you know, the tone of that discussion on Thursday, I do believe there'll be compromises, and I do believe that the board will accept those compromises, right? There were certainly some things that are hard non-negotiables, and that's great. But, you know, I think that there's opportunity for compromise within that, to try to find the solution that kind of meets both, it feeds both hands, if you will.
And I almost wonder, you know, to that point and to your point, Sue, you know, again, just conjecture on my part, but, you know, might it be premature for the board to want to be saying, we don't need this or we don't need that, right? Because I'm sure that there's some angst there. Like if I say publicly, that's not a priority, does that sound like we're not in support of our students, right? So maybe we're just not there yet.
My takeaway from that meeting was, came across very angry. Want to know why we haven't presented something to them now, whatever, and the tone of voice. I have received a couple calls today about people stating just that. If you put something through, will the board vote to accept it?
So
I think we have to take and look at this as a three-legged stool, and we gotta work together.
Yeah.
If they have concerns, they should be coming to us, raising their concerns about our approach, where we've been. That's the board and the council. All three, we're gonna have to work together from now on, because people are watching.
Mhm.
And if they see that we're broke somewhere, we've lost.
Okay, with that, that's a great point to transition over to our subcommittee report outs, comms.
So, communications, do you happen to have the app by chance? Yeah. So plans, thank you very much. So our communications plans for this week include a full page ad in the leader, and you can see it right here. And that's designed to communicate, just thank you for taking the survey. And by the way, thank you to all you guys for like pushing the survey and getting people to take it. But thank you to the community for taking the survey, and then outlining, you know, what the next steps are. You know, just bringing people on board with where we are, where we're going, and to promote the community forum if we have a confirmed date for that. And it's just a good opportunity to highlight to the public that this is a public process and that they are part of it, and to keep them on board with that. We also will have a post in the town newsletter. We'll put out some social media in line with this. And the sort of big piece of news, I think, from a comm standpoint is the Scarborough Leader will be going online only, starting in April.
Oh, really?
And so that paper copy that was in every single mailbox in Scarborough is no longer, or will be no longer in a few weeks. You may know more than I do about, my understanding is that it will simply be sort of an email newsletter in line with the Scarborough Now newsletter that goes out, but that only goes to subscribers of the Press Herald. And I don't know anymore. I'm hoping that it will actually be broadly available to the public in Scarborough, but not great for us just from the standpoint of getting communications out there and getting our news out there, but also not a great advertising vehicle either. If that's the format, they have 2 little banner ads and we can't run anything like that. So we'll be needing to lean more heavily on, you know, probably social media and other, you know, other venues.
It's a shame for the town in general.
But it's bad news for Scarborough.
I have a little bit of an update.
Oh, good.
If you want me.
Yes,
So
please.
on Friday, I met with the chair of the nonprofit that owns
the papers or manages the papers, to get an update from him and to really kind of figure out what this means for Scarborough. Their intent is to issue an online edition only, but it will be, so there will be, Drew Johnson will still be reporting. We still have that great working relationship with him. And it will be both Drew posting articles as they become available and are timely, but then also an edition PDF printed, posted to their Facebook and social media on Fridays. So that you still will, they were very cognizant of the fact that not everybody likes to get their news in bits and pieces and click around for different articles. And so my understanding was that they were very focused on making sure that there was like a PDF edition every week that people could still click into and know that they've read the whole paper. But they are disappointed and can certainly sympathize with the fact that this is a big loss for us. So, and I connected him with some of our other partners, the library, our comms person, to try and make sure that residents are informed about this change and then how they can continue to engage with that online version of the paper.
Oh, that's good news. Thank you.
Does it make sense? Maybe we'll save a little bit of money in the advertising, but does it make sense to us to plan as we go through the process, some periodic mailers kind of supplanting their, people aren't getting the leader in the mail, but possibly we could mail something that.
That's a good question. I think we just have to look at the cost
Right.
and whether that's cost prohibitive, which I don't know how much it costs to send out this postcard. But compared to an ad in the leader, that might be.
A lot more.
Yeah.
EDDM is, you guys used Everyday Direct Mailer, right? Is that who we used? They're not cheap.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
So just trust me, we'll be digging into this tomorrow in our.
and the post office isn't necessarily timely.
We haven't got the postcard yet in my house. Jim, you got it today, right?
I got mine at 4 o'clock today.
Oh, goodness. Today?
Today.
Just a bit of feedback from a conversation I had last night with my wife, and maybe this is more for you than anybody, but the school newsletters, her feedback is not the way to reach the parents. We get 3 of those every Friday. They're 6 pages long. And it's, the flyer's buried somewhere in that. A lot of it's repetitive.
We could send out specific ones that just say building committee.
That was her recommendation, but her feedback was more in general to the newsletters that go out from the district, but using that as kind of how we're trying to communicate to the parents may not be the way to do it.
Thanks for that.
That's anecdotal just from my
Yeah, no,
household,
that's
but
great.
and her friends.
I love anecdotal evidence. And we'll talk about this tomorrow. We're looking at how to get creative and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep
Real creative.
One more thing.
Sure.
So the issue obviously is gonna be that, great, it's on social media, we have to promote that more, but the same people who won't read something online are not gonna get social media, so
How do we reach?
is the leader still gonna be set up in a way that it could be printed, or?
I don't know. That's a
Yeah,
good-
right, so, I mean,
but-
it may be that
yeah.
some subset is made available at town hall and the library and Hannaford or whatever, you print a bunch of copies, I don't know.
Yeah.
And not just another thing to consider.
Right.
Or if you have a list of people who don't want to receive stuff online, then you mail only them instead of mailing the whole town or something.
It's a hard deal with, right?
It's definitely a wrinkle we were not expecting.
Yeah. It's so sudden.
Emily, did you have?
Do people read the town newsletter?
I do.
Not in my household.
I do.
We can get the numbers for you. I mean, Allison has all of that and absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, we know exactly how many subscribers we have and how many people click through and how many people click through for more than one article. And yeah, Allison would have all that data.
So I think it means the Century's closing as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, all of them.
Yeah.
We're raising the price and reducing the service.
I
That's
had
what my letter said.
An idea. Do you think the Scarborough, what's the responsible taxpayers group is called on Facebook?
Toss.
The CTOS.
Do you think they'd be open to having a sort of discussion with somebody in this group? on there and post a video on their website and engage in a thoughtful and polite manner? And talk about.
If only we had connections to concerned taxpayers.
Well,
in Scarborough.
I'm saying that knowing there is. I'm saying that knowing that someone does. But like, I mean, I don't always feel like the postings are very well-rounded on their page. They're very one-sided. And I just wonder if we could approach them in a way that would open up dialogue on this topic. Because what you could open up the concept and idea about would be, yes, it's gonna be expensive, but it's going to be cheaper on an annual basis. Isn't that something that we can build consensus around? At least to break into some thread or vein on that topic.
Well, yeah, we'd have to, take it up with the
Yeah,
group.
okay.
We're on it, but we don't speak for that. We have.
I'm not saying anyone here does, but
Yeah, that's a great idea. We should reach out.
So, Tom, does the town have a way of getting the information if they don't have it? Subscribers to the cable so that to lessen mailing, send it to the people who aren't on,
subscribers to the
To
cable
what?
well, that get to the, that get the,
newsletter?
no, that get all the messages from us that go out by computer as opposed to newspapers. What I'm saying, there are some people who don't have internet. So is there a way to get a list of those that do not, so we could do mailing just to that list? Because townwide mailing is really expensive.
Yeah, certainly we have databases that have all addresses of property owners. That's not necessarily residents.
It's not necessarily perfect, but it might save money, that's all.
That's all I got. Okay. Site selection?
So we met the 26th. We're meeting again on the 12th. We had asked Harriman to weight one factor. John has provided that. We are, as I said, we're meeting the 12th to discuss how to weight, what to weight, and we'll discuss this new matrix that John has distributed in the committee before we bring it to the full committee, in the subcommittee before we bring it to the full committee.
Yeah, what I just follow up on, there are 8 remaining sites.
Yeah.
The first cut through, and I think the weighting will probably bear it out as well. 4 of those 8 really kind of rise to the top. So I think it's fair to say that we probably have 4 leading contenders at this point.
Okay. And we do have a brief executive session still on the agenda for today, just to kind of address any site specific concerns with the options that we have in front of us, as just to kind of have that discussion as we get ready to hold the vote in the next couple of weeks, so. Okay.
Shannon approached me 2 weeks ago. She did not get the notice of our last meeting. Can you make sure that she's on the list?
Taking care of that, I think. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
And then if I'm not interrupting, I'd like to make a quick motion if possible. Sorry, so I think as we're getting further along into this process, there are some absentees each week and there are people who can't be here. And I think as we start to dwindle down on options, I think it's important that as many people as possible can have their say and be respected for the time that they've put into everything. So I know the alternates have come up in the past as a will they vote, will they not? And I think that I'd like to make a motion that alternates be allowed to vote when an absentee makes it possible for the numbers. And due to his presence here tonight, I'd like to make Mike alternate 1 and Marilyn, sorry, alternate 2.
So,
Seconded by Jillian. Okay, discussion?
So I'll voice my support for this. It's the reason I brought it up, notwithstanding my own personal interest in the votes, but I brought this up a couple of meetings ago because, at the time, I think it was a 13-4 vote or something along those lines. And I agree, the further we get along with this process, we're gonna have potentially some big scope reduction votes, we're gonna have elimination votes. And it's far better to be having this conversation about how do we figure out absences and who votes in the event of an absence now, rather than we get to a 9-9 vote with one absence and 2 present alternates. So I certainly support that. My idea would have been to just flip-flop people each meeting, so there's no favoritism or
I don't think
preference.
we're allowed to do that, but.
I mean, we could, but let's not.
I certainly don't want to overcomplicate it, but I do support certainly the timing of this, resolving the issue rather than leaving it to a time where we might be having a passionate, very, dare I say, heated discussion on a particular vote. So I urge you to vote in support of this. And if there are any absences, I may vote in support.
I just wanted to understand, is it as clean as if one person is absent, Mike would vote? If 2 people are absent, they would both vote.
Mhm.
Past that, as long as we have quorum, that would be the.
Yes, correct. Yep.
So if I could ask a clarifying question then, not to overcomplicate this, but determining absences, should we assume or build into the motion that it is on a voting or on a per vote basis or per meeting basis? Because you could have a scenario where somebody gets a call halfway through, hey, your child is sick or your spouse was in a car accident and they have to leave halfway through the meeting. Now that person's absent for potentially an important vote in the second half of the meeting. So is it by vote or by meeting?
I think it would be reasonable to be by vote. And then as another clarifying factor, when I was consulting the far more experienced with these things of April, if you were a part of the vote as an alternate, you also have the opportunity to change your vote or bring it back up as the approving party. So that does carry.
I think, oh, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it would be certainly those present at the time of the vote. You
Yeah.
could be in the restroom and you're
Yeah.
not here for the vote. It happens in Congress.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, I
here
agree.
today,
It's-
but you're not
it's-
there for the vote.
Charlie,
Immediately enough.
Charlie and I talked about, the importance of these votes and making sure that we follow good procedure. And so he's gonna roll call the important votes. And so when we do a roll call vote, when he gets to a name that is not able to cast their vote, our first alternate would vote. If he gets to a second name that is not able to vote, our second alternate would vote. And that way it's orderly, everyone knows what the expectation is. And yeah, to Tom's point, if half of us excuse ourselves, Charlie calls a vote, then it would be those present in the room.
Just a question from, parliamentary kind of, we have not been obviously taking the roll at every meeting. We take attendance, sitting here kind of seeing who's in the room because they're small enough. Is that okay? Do we need to start taking the roll for this? Okay, thank you.
There's an attendance record if anybody wanted to know.
Okay.
And that's reflected in the minutes at the next meeting. So it's on the public record. Yeah.
I think it should be part of the minutes that Charlie announces that an alternate would be voting.
Sure.
That
Yeah.
way we have
Yeah.
a record.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Fred,
Can I just get a quick reminder, when are we voting to pare it down to 2? Is it the 17th or 24th?
24th.
All right, Charlie needs to call the vote on this motion that's on the
Let's,
table.
What's the second?
Yes, Jillian seconded.
So we will call the vote on this. If there's no further discussion. Larry Kane,
Yes.
Leroy Crockett. Absent. I can't, you can, not yet. We haven't passed it yet. James is absent. Tom Escher.
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
You said, I think you said. You didn't say that.
Something.
Rob, did you say yes? Yeah.
I said yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Jenna,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Carrie? Online?
Yes.
Charlie, yes. Alyssa,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Annalee,
Yes.
April,
Yes.
Ava,
Yes.
Jillian,
Yes.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thanks for
Be sure there was no nays.
helping the housekeeping. I promise I get better every time I write one of these committee charges.
All right, thank you. If there's another vote tonight, you guys will vote. All right, so we will move on to review of the survey results. To do this, we wanted to break up into smaller groups. So what we'll do is we'll count off, we'll do groups of 5, and then each group take an option. And the goal being to kind of summarize the major themes, which you'll see already kind of in the results that we have, but then also if you have a laptop, bring up the verbatim and try to identify some of the highlighted comments, right? What are the things that really jumped out of some of the feedback that we got? So we'll do that for, 15 minutes or so in small groups, and then we'll come back and we'll read out on those. Do you want to talk about the data protocol?
Yeah, sure. So, as we were talking about this, in our planning meeting, it was kind of like, okay, so how do we make sure that we have, the ability to get feedback from everyone in the room, in an equitable way so that we share the air? And so it seems logical that we break up into smaller groups. And so if you take a look at this data review protocol, we actually adapted it from a protocol that we use to look at student data here at school. And I thought, geez, this probably could work. So again, what we're gonna have you do is we're gonna have you count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that we have smaller, close-knit groups of 4 or 5 people. And then we're going to ask you to take a look at the data, which we have provided to you in this packet, right? So we basically printed the slide deck that had the information from this evening. What you won't see in this packet is the individual narratives. You will see the themes of the narratives. Ray and I put our heads together on that. And short of killing an entire forest, there was no way for us to reasonably provide, each piece of data to you. And so we thought we would provide it in this format. And certainly if you want to look at the discrete comments, you have to do that. What we're going to ask you to do in your small group is to look at 2 different pieces of data. The first piece of data that you'll look at will be slide 16 to 21, which are basically the ranking of the 1 to 10. And then the second priority that we'll ask you to make is we're going to assign a different proposal to each group so that your group can go deeper on the feedback about that proposal. In thinking about that just seemed a more logical way to go deep on the proposals versus having every group try to condense the feedback from all 5 proposals. The protocol itself is pretty straightforward. Again, when we do a data exercise, we try really hard to stay low on the ladder of inference, if you will. So we really start at, what do you see? What is the data saying? Without you making an inference and saying, well, I can tell you why people voted that way. This means da 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 da. So, that first step, which is really describing the data, step 2, what do you see? So you're just writing down facts that you're noticing about the work that you're looking at. You're avoiding making judgments or interpretations, and we're going to ask you to record this on chart paper. Once your group feels like you've done that, we're going to ask you, you can begin to interpret the data. So what does the data suggest to you? So you're going to try to interpret, Why do you think those things are there? And what is being suggested and why? And that, remember, you know, even though there might be data that you're taking a look at that you personally disagree with, right? We are trying not to go to that place. You are trying to really stay in this open frame of mind where your main role tonight is to try to assess, what do you think that these people that answered the survey are trying to convey to us as a group, right? As you listen to other people in your group, ask them questions, try to learn more from each other. The next step, once you go through that, is what are the implications of the survey feedback? Does your group have any suggestions on what steps might be taken next? Are there some strategies that could be effective? What else would you like to see happen? Does this spurn any thinking for you or for the group in regards to some potential next steps, right? Maybe you looked at the data and it highlighted, you know, a light bulb for you, like, oh, maybe we should be marrying a couple of proposals that we hadn't thought about before. But now as we're reading this survey data, it's like, ooh, is that something that we should be thinking of? So we really want you to do some thinking in that way. And then obviously we would like you to reflect on this process, right? Again, we're approaching it this way because we see how many great thinkers there are in this room, and we don't hear from all of you every week, right? And I understand that not everybody is as outgoing or as comfortable talking in a group of 25 people, but we know all of you are great thinkers, very passionate about the process. And so we're trying to create a structure by which we can elicit more of that from you. And then the second sheet is just, you know, if you wanted to take some of your own notes, you know, as you're going through this process, we wanted to make sure that that was available for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so we will count off by 5. Just because we'll go opposite of what I would normally do. We'll start with Larry. 1,
2, 3,
4, 5,
1,
2, 3,
4,
5, 1.
2, 3, 4.
1,
2,
3,
was it a question?
4.
5. You're a 1. You get to play. All right. All right, so find a corner of the room and get in your groups. And we'll just go we'll just make it easy and go 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5G. For those of you online, apologize, it'll get muddy in here trying to listen to the conversations, but we're gonna put our heads down and do a little bit of work for a minute,
Charlie, do you want me to thank you?
please.
I'll give everyone a 10-minute warning before we're gonna come back. Yeah. We're coming back to.
Please also, when you get in your groups, kind of assign a speaker, a recorder, kind of thing, right? Self-elect. We're 5.
Yeah.
2,
3, yeah.
5, 3, 5. We are 5.
Yeah.
We go.
Booby trapped it.
Oh, do we have?
Yeah. We'll see what we get.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
See if there's questions.
Oh, actually. Okay.
Kind of grabbed it. but-
No, I would love it if you scribed.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm not
I'm
a
back to the
scribe.
popcorn thing
Oh
from
my God.
Act 1.
Yes.
Let's go, right? Officer five, B, right?
Well, it's funny because but you know, some people liked A and to B and
Like, why, yeah, why are we doing this? Four? Wait, four? Oh, I don't want to go gray in
Oh.
Wah, wah.
We can't both be fours.
You want me to trade? You want me to trade?
Doesn't matter. I just, you know, like,
And
I just wanna, I wanna deepen the perspective.
I was gonna say, do you wanna split up the board? Yeah. Nope, she's gone.
She's gone.
All right, she got her input before she left anyway.
It's gonna be a half by a well then.
Yeah, she fled. No, no. All right, we're doing option.
Okay.
B. So, you got moved to group two.
Yes. Remember you opted out? So option E, fourth primary.
Do you want to start by looking at the one on chance or for the overall question?
Do that.
Still orienting myself.
All right, we will start on page 20, on slide 28.
Okay.
And tell you that.
I was surprised at. I like that it keeps the neighborhood schools only to 1.
How concerned are you?
On option. Yeah, well, I think it's probably because of option A, people were already.
That's what was it.
Option A.
So again, saying
And
a lack of difference.
Right,
And we're just looking at like what we see in the data.
That's
what I heard you say.
41%.
That 21% say, you know, it's a lot. You said we're not 19%. Same thing. Right? And
Yes.
so it's almost.
It is interesting,
Right?
just kind of like spread all over the place.
Sounding.
All right.
I'm inferring that we're gonna write that.
No,
The inside
No
job,
guidance.
you know? Yeah, exactly.
There were 100.
We got a ringer over here.
So like, I'm on page 32. I was going through the docs.
That could show concern for like.
Different number of five.
Yeah, like.
Could you skip?
Right?
That tells us that. And I think like keeping that.
I also think that it's a 38.
Well, so the reason I do that, I use the basis. People who didn't.
I don't know.
They're just.
I feel like just a quarter of people go all way.
I don't know.
Or a fifth, I guess.
Like, well, really did.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm on page 28, so if you look at.
I maybe you just make, because it is the data, right? It's like you do just take the total.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. It's not that different.
Check that.
Yeah, right, no. Let me know when you have two. Let me know when you have two in costs. All right. Yeah, but that's good.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's a count. It's 4%, 15.
Well, just the thing about this though, also, remember, is this is all just like, people just respond, they're not choosing. Like, we're not choosing in bullets, this is, I like neighborhoods, right? So maybe that explains why the line numbers, they have the ball in here. They've got 6 for it to be counted.
Wait, what do you mean?
Well, you said you were surprised that only 21% said they liked that they kept the neighborhood school, but this is all just coming like, they didn't choose a bullet. It wasn't like 1 of 4 options, I like that it goes neighborhood school, versus whatever, it's just if they got to say, oh, I like this option, it's neighborhood school. Yeah, right, because these are just all.
Oh, was this the fill-in?
Yeah, this is all the.
Yeah, these are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
That's why it's cheap. Yeah.
That's right. Took the survey.
I know, right? But yeah, that was.
I know, we're two survey makers here with us.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
We're three.
Oh my God, you all.
We were
Oh my
deep
God.
in the weeds.
I can shut us right.
Follow me up. But yeah, so people are having problems.
Either going all the way. But yeah, so, you know, so I think you're gonna just.
You know where it is.
All right.
Right, like, things like that, like that first, like, percent, like.
Like, it should be a yes. Oh, yeah.
And then I also think, like, the fact
How
that.
do you-
Give us, you know, did not weigh in.
Right.
Right, like,
Mhm.
to me, that would. Things from.
You don't think that they understand.
People who have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
Definitely that's extremely important. The 550. And otherwise, it's almost like. And you can also, if you take somebody like you.
But then.
Yeah, the answer kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, yeah, I did.
Switch on.
Yep.
Yeah, no, totally, right.
I was very
That
surprised.
would only bump it up to 5%.
Kind of.
Only 1% thinks that it is a long solution.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like 3 people, right?
Right, not at all important. Couldn't that just be inferred as like, yeah, we don't care. Like, that's not a
Saw
no.
New K too, and they're like, oh.
It's just like, doesn't
But
matter.
again,
Whatever
we're
is
dealing
like
with
best.
the AR coding, that we're saying, I asked for, I
If you
wanted
answer
to find out how
eight,
it's
nine,
going to say, it's very curious, like what's
Then
being.
you care about it. I mean, and other than that.
Like, when I was going through my head, I was reading it.
I know, that's what I was like.
Well, it's obviously it's like, oh, I think we're gonna talk with my PhD or
Yeah, there actually, well, there's a bump in time. Switzerland.
Mhm, yep.
Except for that.
The other thing I. So you're not necessarily.
The second page.
Yeah. Not all. But then. It is
No, right. Right, yeah. You know, MPI, simply about the parliament. Yeah, so Paul was asking about the process. Comments followed counter multiple times. So I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, you know what it would be, I know there's. One of them, they have two of them, is because they mentioned gym and arts. So I wonder if it's one day.
I think, so
Got it.
the first few pages are the council.
But I appreciate that.
How they security down in twice.
No, it's the raw
Yeah.
counts. This is the raw.
Okay, that's up to all.
So if you want to.
Mhm.
And some people just might.
And then they, the way
Right.
they,
Yeah.
is it narrative, you didn't categorize, we didn't answer.
Oh, yeah.
Or like that.
My time on the phone.
All right.
So really quick, so I just quickly wrote down like a theme of misunderstanding that there's no new construction, there's no, end of
Again,
we're readjusting grade levels. We're not doing either one, and that 21% of people loved keeping the neighborhood school, 19% of people saw no benefit.
Yes.
Did I miss anything?
Buildings up to code.
Yeah.
They said that like 31%.
That doesn't. Like,
told us
That's where we're not going.
they.
That could be the.
Right.
Struggle to go.
Because they either said, I don't know.
Vote for
That's
that.
a 10. right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not getting programming and life safety stuff.
Yeah.
I think they struggle with understanding a lot of areas.
Well, I like, we'll see it on the, like on the tax part and on the core.
And I don't know, it was around 28% plus.
It's like, what do folks, like, when you talk about safety within the school setting, what do people think? Thinking of different exact word in my industry, but like, thinking
those
what
only get coded in-
first think is like.
Yeah, so they actually said, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, these things that are, for whatever reason, those come to like top of our heads first, right? It's not vehicular traffic, which is like, you could argue that that's a safety issue, that's a major safety issue. Which that's a, that's a good point. I didn't even look at it. But, it is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people assume. But I don't think that is there necessarily. Well, it's built in 90.
Everything else is all about systems.
That's where it's great.
That's
From a renovation perspective,
Right.
right?
Yeah, because I think that.
If we were gonna say one
I
question.
don't want anyone to do
Allow-
Right.
as we think about like bringing it up to current.
Options.
I think
I would expect during this building. Consolidation. That's what it is. We don't.
Yeah. You get 3 parameters.
Because I think the point of.
Are you looking at page 20?
What is the-
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
But
Right. So these are the ones, these are the ones that I think bring this.
We have a mandate from the community to bring all of the.
So the meeting.
Ken was, love it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that how we're?
And again, remember the staff was working. Right, so it was.
I asked her,
really-
which-
So it's that.
Yeah.
That defines,
But she's not, so.
I like that.
Like building wide. Only part day, that's why they talk about the asbestos. Well, it's not saying it's a late in the, but like any other. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. and
Yeah.
that's why-
Okay.
I would say.
I think it's the easiest thing that people understand.
100%. You go on. Yep.
I can kind of see that, like. Yeah. Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else that we jumped
What's the
out?
question about adding?
Or should we move on to?
Yeah, that got.
That's the question
Oh,
to
yeah.
be, that's right, that on page 17.
On 20 for you, yeah, right.
We can keep going, but just worth reading through this.
Ultimately, right, as I look at it, it's like, you know, there was a lot of nines and tens.
So keeping 3 primaries is, you know,
Yeah,
stuff.
if we had infinite money, let's do all of it.
Everything's important.
Yep.
That's all I think is.
And again, right, right side, why is it less?
Right.
Like 2H is. 2H is a tough one, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's almost just like, yeah, whatever.
No,
You
you're
don't.
doing fine, so we talked about that.
Yeah, understand.
And then we can start.
Tax are having. Not having a separate one. Care of it.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that does to the school schedule. Mushrooms and wasting time.
Drawback, concern is price. Probably just think just, like, I can confirm it, I won't.
Right, 30% of people are wondering what the difference is.
And then 14% have the money to do it. They're stating that there's limited flexibility. But, you know,
I totally get, I think that, the importance of that, it's more important to me now that I know that after, before and after, totally,
I guess it would
depend on the state.
Yeah.
That's the limiting factor, that's really bad.
Yeah, if you don't mind, it sounds like a conclusion for
Yeah.
You did? Which is why. Yeah, because I wanna like see what people like.
When I was. Just back to two quick. Yeah, but where's the? What are, I guess, like, what's the thoughts on 2N specifically, right?
Yeah.
Two, or 2K and 2N. And like 2K to me, this goes back to what we kind of talked
Yeah, they
about,
should
right?
be fine.
So almost a third of respondents are saying it's extremely important to update all of our pieces. That is.
So we added school, but like we didn't actually remove grade level out of, right, 2-3 or 1-3, whichever option you're looking at, but it was interesting to me that that was flagged. Right here.
That was online.
So.
That's what I was wondering. That was actually why I asked for the coding, because I was like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see though what.
Were those included into their previous numbers, or those are separate factors?
I mean, yeah.
So I don't know if you read the article, it's kind of over about, cars going 60 for roofing. Currently 41. And to go, which gives you something like.
Potentially, I mean, I think it'd be interesting,
4%.
like what
Well,
other
that's K
schools
two.
say, if that could be.
And so this is encouraging
It is
to go from 41 to.
But I don't know if people.
So expensive.
Read that part.
And it gets you so brave. And so when you think about, I mean, I don't know a lot about building, I did build a house at one time and it's getting biggest bang. And not so big wall, and the walls have something.
Yeah.
So why don't we just do nothing?
Right.
So typically, and I don't know what we have existing, but like typically there's rubber roofs, most likely on these buildings. And the problem with that is there's no access from below, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
The
what it
whole
looks like
ascent.
next
So
time.
most likely it's metal deck. Paper barrier,
It was honestly a lot easier to write on that wobbly thing.
and then you
Yeah,
have your
yeah,
outpost membrane.
Anything else under that?
100% right? The stack effect, for that, right? So that's the most important. The problem with that is
Sorry.
you're gonna have to re-roof the whole thing. Every building have to be re-roofed, and then you're running numbers, right? You're having Harriman with their consultant run numbers on, well, what do we want to achieve for like that? From a cost perspective, if there was access above.
Maybe 5 up at the bottom.
House,
Oh, number,
100%.
yeah, 4
I think that's
people.
way more reasonable to do. So you just go up there, walk around, you extract whatever's there and spray foam, and what's the bad one, but
Throw some
cellulose,
down,
whatever you want,
right?
right? But
Spreading
like, the
kids
problem
across.
is that it's a whole assembly and it's gonna be a complete reroute. Like,
I wonder if that's what they, what she.
yeah, I don't.
Came up with the estimate, 'cause she's talking about the walls, like what, that there's no like. Anything on the exterior wall, if the insulation, and the wall, or if it could be inside. All, you know, like. Oh, either way. It's super expensive.
And it's, I mean, you nailed it, right? I don't even think it's the same reason that people say the ROI in replacing windows in a house is nothing, because right, that vertical exterior assembly.
Air sealing.
Yeah. 100%. Anyway, I will shut up, but,
No, it's yeah, it's good though.
2N, sorry. And then the modulars, what is our thoughts? on That,
What people are spitting about, so. They're spitting about money.
I don't know what guys do.
And I think it's, of course, it's very possible.
Alright, so please take those things that we saw, like, should we narrow down things that we
I think that's
saw? Like, what do we think?
28%.
Right, like, what does that suggest?
10 minutes.
oh,
Set my timer and I back this back one.
And so I think that's the reason we're not-
I think this is.
No, 10 minutes till readout.
We can probably add some time.
You're asking.
Right. I think we need to work on options and the.
We closed the We're supposed to be reading out and meeting as a big group in 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
But
We're gonna do the assignment. She wants
But I
to-
don't understand your question.
We're gonna get it.
Based on.
Excuse me, Charlie.
All the comments, not the comments specific to those. Yeah, so it's a clause.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll just move down, but like, as far as.
Yeah, work on the options.
Even though it says benefits, there's some negatives, right?
So-
Comments, so if we go through.
Right, like, so this is
what are
where.
some kind of, you know, I see little benefits, so that's a negative. 420 people in the benefits that.
I'm gonna get another color.
Yep.
Jenna.
So I was just doing like.
Yeah.
Right with urgency.
I think you're right.
All right.
Fast. Oh my God.
I was channeling my children throughout the tank.
And then.
So.
So what else do you want to?
Girl mom life. Okay. All right, new color, big line.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All the way.
Or like even, even.
Absolutely. We've done this before. So what are we doing now? We're interpreting the data?
So like.
No, we're looking for
like,
implications.
big things that just wrote down, right, like what.
Yeah, that's
And I don't know.
Page 25.
Right, like, I think we could still go ahead. You know.
No new construction, that's like incorrect. Going 20.
Those are the same things that
Is it, I mean, looking at, I don't know,
Right.
and I prefer not to answer, is it strange that 39%? To me. Have we not educated, have we not been just clear enough, like, with what we're putting out there, for like the public that understand?
Keep in mind. They've already been through it.
Yeah, and they're probably just like, whatever, maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
I thought the survey findings.
Yep.
So I went back on it.
You're so great.
Well, well, 31, but I guess others, so 31%. They are either said, I don't know, or I don't care. So.
The
they all
level
have
of
a flavor.
misunderstanding.
Mm.
For those, for that.
Uh,
benefit.
People liked keeping
It's like,
the neighborhood
I don't see.
for 119% saying the benefit.
Because then when you flip the page, what drop?
Yeah.
So we were on the survey, you have to keep looking back to remind yourself of like what the operating.
If you click the link.
Okay, yeah. Because I do think that, we are just kind of not. And this is all. We're really gonna sit and try to understand.
I'm just saying. The first couple items.
Was there anything? That for us. The biggest.
I mean, if we know what to compare to other options, I have changed to be next. Oh, yeah, we felt like I did it, yeah. But like, so we had, like.
Yeah.
And then. Right?
Alright, so even amount of support
There were
slash,
just not that many, you know,
and
honestly.
indifference slash lack of support.
Nine C is amazing to see the drop off in count as far as the questions came up. Like over half the questions with nine C have less than 10.
But C is, do you have questions or comments? So if you didn't have questions, you should have just checked.
You should have checked that on, or
If you check no, so there's only 100. I know. Because people didn't have questions.
oh, there was a, okay, so the no is not showing.
Right.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
so while we're trying to find.
And the drawback.
There are 2 data. Cost. It costs us the drawback for every. Yeah. And then the grade level.
Right.
This one is. More basic.
Well, plus 6 doesn't, 3 doesn't. And.
Oh, man. 2.5 minutes.
Demographic.
I was gonna say, we should talk about the one that comes out.
So we've got our pricing cost concerns.
We wanna talk about the other, the general question? Is there anything else?
Yep, right here. We have 15 minutes if we come back and schedule read out, which for 5 groups is gonna be 30 minutes per group. I mean, technically, you've got like someone who will do.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, the agenda is.
I think that's key, that's one of the biggest negatives.
Just a quick pulse check for all the groups. We're gonna be good in 2 minutes. We need extra time. You guys are good? Good. You guys?
It came from
Tom? You guys good on time? Do we need do we need to budge and go a little longer?
We need probably 5 minutes.
That'll give us time to go.
Okay. All right, we'll do 5 minutes. We're back.
Yeah, that's.
So the demographics, I thought that was the one that got the list.
Compare every 44% like those two kids. So that means
We did
that they must have questions.
I mean, I'd like to see the actual 9%, the actual code for that.
That's like me. I got 2
Yeah,
kids, but
I mean,
they're,
that's-
they're young enough. They haven't started.
Yes,
Right?
got it.
Things will like can't understand that they're.
And I was trying to figure out how does that compare to like the number of older people, and just found that, you know, I thought it was close enough. So, like, it's not.
What am I putting money into solutions that aren't gonna fix long-term problems? Yes. Yep. Time.
We're gonna.
Oh, we're giving it the 5? Just kidding, 5 minutes. Round 2.
You're on your toes.
There's only 3% of renters. I don't know.
Man, I kind of miss timekeeping. Fun.
Good at it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
All right, what indications
And
do
home
we
kids will like
see
single
from
family
these?
home
Like,
renters over
what
there.
steps
Yeah.
we take from this?
Is there?
Yeah, I think that people
That are seasonal.
that investors. Yeah, I think investors, I mean, I see ads
It's
on
a-
for house rentals in Scarborough, and Scarborough on Facebook.
The market. Oh, Scarborough. Yeah,
So that there's such a high.
You know, people who, on that site will say, well, I have 2 other house rentals, you know, and it's Scarborough.
Yeah.
But they bought property
And
over
they're-
here.
Interesting.
Year-round renting, how are we? Factors to the drawbacks. It's like features. Every option. Oh, well, the thing about readjusting the grade levels, so I did make some, I know we're just looking at data. Yeah. Reality is, I don't know, I'll say my possible was. Well, if you read through the comments, there were a lot of comments about 6th graders getting, and the teachers not wanting. Yeah, different experience, you know, like. Versus saying, all right. And
Actually, yes, so potential next.
like they want their,
These
lights. I wonder that they are segregated, because they really don't get on with the 7th and 8th graders. Like, it was just a lot of anecdotal stuff like that. Like.
So he's really strong. Yeah.
I just feel like you'll also have your.
Should be integrating, right?
Think about my issue.
I.
today.
The value.
Yeah.
And I think those are the people that.
Same thing, just continue that your thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. That's very.
Yeah.
Like, it's a community, right? You know, right. Oh, right, I would.
I can't speak to it, I wasn't.
Give it more
But like,
better.
just want their case to go. That's so, you know what I mean? So like, seeing it all split up is kind of interesting and trying to grasp what. Yeah, we turned out okay.
There were a lot.
This is totally off topic, like.
I know a lot of people just felt like it was just too much. I mean, they got to the first list, they got to those plans. I don't know,
But
I don't know.
that's.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's better to have it all out here and then. They can like information. They got to change.
Just so funny, because everyone I talked to, like, loves it. They were like, I love the level of detail you went into, I love that you went through it all, I love that I had my opportunity to give each specific thing, and I was like,
I know, it was great.
yeah.
God, and yeah. But forcing them to 12 to 5 minutes.
I don't care what happens.
Even if a third of them said, I don't know.
I'm not for one person. I don't know.
No, because if we look at.
I agree with the top one. Like I'm that parent. I don't do that. I don't. But both my wife and I work full time. And she's like, we're talking about like, what are we gonna do when they hit summer? What the hell do we do?
That's right.
You know, so I'm like, the busing.
Elizabeth applause.
Oh, that's all you get.
No way, I'm a board rep now.
You can hear it, turn your vote.
Next year. Next year, my son's driving. All right.
Oh,
Come back. You can say it.
Keep it out of the discussion block, right?
Oh, wait,
You said keep the time out of the discussion? Okay.
Perfect. We will miss you.
Yeah.
Oh,
What?
What?
No, like, hey, Jillian.
Right on, right.
How are you? Oh, right.
We will miss you.
Yeah. By the time you turn back.
Wherever you are.
Right.
All right, we will.
Over
here.
It's
all the same.
Sit in your seat.
We'll wait. We'll go around, we'll start with group one, about 3 minutes each to kind of give us some findings and.
And is it on the first 20 questions as well as our option or only on our option?
I think,
Depends on how you approach it.
yeah, whatever you guys discussed, we'd like to hear about it, yeah.
We looked at the first 20, whatever, two through 8 to 0. The 3 that had the lowest percentage were related to consolidation, things that people didn't feel important, related to consolidation. Not adding a fourth school, wasn't important to consolidate, and keeping the modulars. Well, that didn't really. The 3 that had the highest percentage of interest, favorability, concern, whatever, the wording is slightly different, all related to physical condition and things that people could grasp onto and seem to understand, being codes, coming up to current codes, classroom design for modern teaching, construction methods, ventilation, heating, cooling. So there seems to be strong support for the things that, relate to life safety and being able to exist in a building and having the structure be appropriate for the learning that needs to happen in it. So those are the large ones that we apparently spent too much time on because I got very little support when I came over and asked if we could have much more time. But so option A was our option, and we found that let's get the numbers here. our three takeaways, or what the data suggest, were that, there's a perceived cost benefit to using existing structures. However, there seems to be a mismatch between that perceived cost benefit and how expensive it is, because the highest rated item in 5B, the biggest concern was cost. And then that's borne out in C, which are the questions. The highest number of questions, the highest percentage questions pertain to cost and tax impact. 47% people had questions about that, and renovating. So the things that people think are the benefits, keeping the schools, using the existing schools and renovating them, are the things that they have the most questions. So I don't know if that's just an education thing, a cognitive dissonance thing, but doesn't seem to line up. That seemed to. I yield that.
Thank you.
20 seconds, love it.
Group two?
Not here.
Everybody.
We got started by kind of looking at the option specific questions to begin with, and then use the least important, most important discussion to kind of frame that and either support it or asking questions about it. So we had 21% of the people say that they liked keeping the neighborhood schools. That aligns with what we saw in option A. 19% said they had no benefits at all. So there's some indifference there, and there seems to be an even amount of support for neighborhood schools, and then also maybe not neighborhood schools. And then we also had some bit of a misunderstanding a little bit. We came up with about 5% of people who ended up saying something that wasn't true about the option, mainly new construction. There's no new construction, or there is new construction. Option B, they said they liked that there wasn't new construction. So figuring out how the next survey can maybe ask those questions a little bit better, so we know that that misunderstanding. We had 31% of people say they felt unsure about this option, which suggests that there's a difference toward the option until the education. And so we'll use the number 10%. It's probably not accurate. Like 10% of the people are going to vote yes on it. 10% of the people are going to vote no on anything. So we identified this 31% as really the group of people that can sway one way or another. And so communications that are focused on providing more information about the option should move on. Be really important for a second survey. Top concerns, like everyone else's, is price and cost. It's not really talked a little bit about how renovations aren't really a longer term solution to some of the issues, particularly overcrowding. So putting money into solutions that might not fix those problems. Is that something that needs to be communicated? And then we talked about disruptions to education and possibly redistricting concerns were mentioned a little bit. And then finally, I think like everybody, 74% of the people found that tax impacts and location would be very important to them. And so that's the things that didn't work last time around, the last referendum. So that checks out. And then really what that boils down to is we really need to start communicating cost and location really efficiently and accurately. And then finding out how people also want to receive their information as well, keep up that. And then kind of frame everything when we talk about cost in the realm of my way over.
No, you're doing great.
Frame everything in the like the top of like operational cost being a big concern as well. Like it's not just the bottom line when you're looking at options, it's also how much it's going to cost to run these things 20, 30, 40 years in the future. And then, yep, so this is the last point, kind of what we talked about up here, 31%, really try to focus in on the education of these 31% of the people, because that we feel is where we can really make some headway when a referendum. Is that?
No, 3 minutes.
Is that 3 minutes?
Yeah, that was perfect.
All right.
Group three?
All right, so the number one thing that we noticed was the huge drop off along the survey. That was just one of the things that we had concerns about, especially when we got down. I can't remember where it was. There's like a
page 32 to page, I'm gonna jump.
no, go ahead.
Page 32 to page 33, there was a difference of about 1,100 people
Yeah,
adding
so
their comments and really engaging.
yeah, So we were curious about that, it happened in a couple of the options. So we were just noticing that, you know.
So people are,
1,200
so you have fewer people asking questions than you have name and drawbacks? Is that the?
Yeah, I think, you know, by the time you got to that second list of things, people just didn't engage. So we had just some wonders about that. Some of the things we did notice is that about 25% of people said that they saw little benefit in this option, but 22% and then another 11%, 22% said I don't know, and about 11% said whatever the other option was. So it's like, I prefer not to answer.
Yeah.
And so we thought maybe they were that could be a piece that is like a little swayable, like you said. There were no obvious conclusions, we didn't think, with this survey for this option. There are a lot of questions. There were a number of things with no response at all. But 24% were definitely concerned about the expense, and I think that's consistent throughout. Kind of, you know, theme across. 18% were concerned with the number of transitions. We've talked about that a little bit too. And location was another concern. Yep. The comments most consistent were about cost, location, and tax impact. Some positives were that we would be addressing overcrowding and continuing along with some of the neighborhood schools. So we thought the result, there was just not a strong endorsement for this project. And what we took away from the survey didn't identify levels of knowledge. That might be useful, like how knowledgeable do people feel about the state of the schools. That might be a good thing to know, like if they gave themselves a 1, how did that impact the rest of their answers? And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah, we felt like the outcome of the survey wasn't really indicative of really the outcome of what we're trying to get at, I guess. Is that a fair assessment you want to add?
We didn't gain any real insight from the way the survey presented its data.
Yeah.
Thank you. Report?
We started with the first questions at the top before we got into our option. And I'll really just talk quickly about the ones that haven't been met. Talked about already because a lot of groups hit what we had. We did add that there was support for concern about the physical condition of the middle school, and that there was support for the special ed classrooms being in there. We said there was slight support for separate gym and cafeteria in music and art. And there was definitely support for parking, playground, safety, electrical codes, vehicle improvements, those as well. For additional things that haven't been mentioned so far, that there was support for in there. And then option D, which is the new consolidated school, we found it interesting that 28% either said they don't know for not to answer the question with that. And that was one of the largest groups we saw. 27% said they saw no benefit. 32% said they didn't like it, that it was closing neighborhood schools. And then cost was 20% were concerned about the cost. And then the other interesting thing we found was that 102 people responded. They were concerned about the location of where it would be. And on the question section, the biggest theme we saw in there was location and cost. Anything else to add from our group that I didn't summarize? I had some time to spare.
Yeah, you got away with it. I wasn't here for the beginning.
Thanks, Rick. All right, and group 5.
All right, so I won't spend a lot of time on the first one, but I'll just say, as we're thinking about the next survey, in our group at least, we had a bit of a discussion about, for those of us who don't have necessarily a strong preference between neighborhood or consolidated school, it was difficult to answer the first question, so thinking like 2A, 2B, 2C, how important is keeping neighborhood schools, how important is keeping consolidated schools? If you don't really care, how do you answer that? So if we think about like 2C, for instance, does not at all important mean I don't care whether it's consolidated or not? Does it mean I absolutely don't want consolidated? So there's a little bit of muddiness in the waters there. So again, something to think about for the next survey. Jumping to our options, so we were option B, which brings 3 of the neighborhood schools to just be kindergarten and has the new 1 to 3. Not a lot of support for this one. So on the benefit page, the number 1 benefit was, I see no benefits. I do not like this option. That was 32%. We thought it was interesting that internally, it seems most obvious to us that the benefit of this is that you have room for future expansion, whether that be, preschool, something else. But that was only 5% of responses there that allows flexibility for the future. So that benefit that we see internally isn't necessarily, picking up for others. And then similar to what others saw here, there's a huge percentage, 39% of people who either said, I don't know, or I prefer not to answer. So is it that this option isn't clear, or is it maybe that there was just survey fatigue? We don't really know there. Thinking about the drawbacks, expense was number 1, which I believe was number 1 for all the options. And then number 2 was, I don't like that it readjusts the grades levels. That was 11%. So we were just having a conversation about, is there evidence that we can speak to of, different grade levels that are the most beneficial? That's obviously going to be coming up again and again, whether we do consolidated school or move, middle school to just 7 to 8. There's kind of across the board concerns about different grade grouping. So if there's any data that we actually have, that's probably something that we'll want to be sharing with the public too. That's it.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask that we kind of come back to the tables and not open for discussion now, just because of our tight agenda. We have a discussion block, and so we can, themes and thoughts on what we just did, we'll do during discussion block, if that's all right, because I know that Emily has some slides, or Mark, are you presenting today?
I think I am. Some combination of the two.
I love it when they're good things.
All right, so
I know you didn't. I was like, I'm here. You said, I didn't. Oh, but.
Great, yeah, all right, we're ready to go, sorry.
All right, no worries. Okay, so for our design
All right, listen
update,
up.
for our design update for the evening, we have a few additional comments that, so last time we shared some of the survey results. And so these are posted after the comments that we shared the last time. So this is, and so we kind of grouped them as keep some or all the neighborhood primary schools. And we also did a consolidated, people that suggested options that were consolidation options. And then there's another few that are additional comments. And so some comments were to move grades 5 through 8 to the high school and build a new high school. And Wentworth would become a 2 through 4, and the primaries become pre-K through 1. And so our initial assessment of that was that would be very cost prohibitive to build a new high school. Expand the primaries on the existing sites, expand Wentworth, and split the middle school into 2 middle schools. And so you would expand one and construct a second one. Again, likely the very cost prohibitive solution for all of those. Third consideration was to look at primaries are K through 2, make Wentworth a 3 through 6, and then build another 3 through 6, and then middle school becomes 7 through 8. So a lot of square footage and a lot, or new construction, and likely cost prohibitive. Another solution was to, at a primary school, build a new middle school, and sell the middle school, convert it to a K through 2 school. So there's a concern if you to think about taking a middle school with the design of it for students of that age group and trying to convert it to much younger students. And so you've got fixtures and a lot of things that are designed for bigger people that would have to be redesigned for littles. So, and also a lot of new square foot and likely cost prohibitive. Another option, primaries become pre-KK and creatively tweak Wentworth to become 1 through 6. I'm not sure how we would creatively do that. That's a very large school. And the middle school would become 7, 8. So that would be about an 1,800 student school Wentworth would become. So also very expensive. And and then neighborhood K through 4 schools or K through 5 through 6 at Wentworth and 7 to 8 at the middle school. So as we've seen on all the options we've explored to date, the site constraints on the primaries just don't allow them to grow to that large. So those were the primary school options that came through after the 25th. The consolidated options are to build a new K through 8 school, which would be a very large, we're assuming if this is a single, that would be a 26 or 27, almost 2,700 student school. Build one large new K through 4. Wentworth becomes 5, 6. Middle school becomes 7, 8 with portables removed. So that K through 4 is also a very large school, 1,400 students. K through 6 school is the third option, 7, 9 school, and keep the high school at 10 to 12. So this is looking at moving 9 into the middle school and then building K through 6. So very large 200 or 2,000 student school, likely cost prohibitive. And then a fourth consolidation would look at consolidating the primaries into 1 K through 2, expand Wentworth 3 through 5, minor modification to the middle school to meet the most pressing concerns. And this is similar to ones we've already been looking at. And we did a very rough order of magnitude of 122 million. And so that's one, again, that we put out there as a potential for further consideration. And then the last consolidation option would be to consolidate into 2 schools, 1 K through 5 and 1 6 through 8, which would be very large, both schools. So on the next slide, which is some, oh yeah, please, yep.
The second consolidated option down, we built 1 large K to 4. You said it would be a very large school. Are you contemplating that as being a school that would house all K to 2 plus all 3 to 4, or
that's
K
how
that would be allocated to a 4th neighborhood primary and all 3, which would be a different level of students?
Yeah, I believe this is looking at 1 large school for all K through 4.
Thanks.
All right. And then other suggestions were if additions renovations will be done to the middle school, no matter how many grades are housed there, keep it 6, 8 and leave Wentworth with no additional renovation. And the issue is that we've got additional classrooms are needed for the increased population in 3 through 5. So we have to do some work there. Build a new K through 2 school and a new 3 through 5 school. And so we were unclear if this means that it's consolidated schools or additional schools. So, and again, it likely be cost prohibitive if we're building all new. Combine the school with community center. The community center is not part of this project. Retain portables at the middle school to house nurse, art, music, special ed program storage. So somehow utilize that those assets, but that doesn't align with the benchmarking to remove the portables. And one of the big concerns with them is that you are moving students in and out of the school, and that's a safety issue. So those were some of the additional survey comments that we received.
Direction on
Oh, on
whether that's something you want us to explore?
Yeah. I actually just wrote a note about, at some point, we as a committee have to decide, right? So the idea is that on the 24th, we're going to vote to try to get down to 2 options. We have a hybrid A/B option that's been presented that we haven't officially said is under consideration. And then this is another one we could look at. I was actually something very similar to this came to my attention today, and I was gonna suggest it to the group. But we need to, as a committee, kind of decide how we want to, you know, when we had this discussion a few weeks ago, we said, well, once we see all the ideas come together, assess them at once, excuse me, assess them at once, and then decide which ones we want to take forward. Just understand the time constraint we're against, right? So we have today, next week for kind of debate deliberation, and then we're going to make a vote. And so if we want to include these in next week's debate deliberation, we probably need to decide to do that now, because we'll need Harriman to look into these, this one in particular. So I'll just leave it at that and then let you keep going. And when we get into discussion, we can talk about it. Great.
All right, so looking at the AB hybrid, this was reviewed at the last meeting, and so no significant changes here, but we did looked at the AB hybrid based on option A. So that again, the two hybrids are one based on option B and one based on option A, and the resulting bottom line cost for based on option B is 121 million for the full solution, and then 112 million for option A. And so those are the AB hybrids. Also reviewed at the last meeting was an alternative that's based on option B, which looks at 8 Corners becoming a 676 student enrollment, and what would that look like as a variant of option B. And so and the bottom line price tag to that is 104 million. The alternate version 1 based on option A looks at slightly different enrollment configuration, with 8 Corners, the largest site, accommodating 542, so slightly less than the one we just looked at in the previous slide. The total is 107 million for this option variant based on A. So, and then the version 2 alternative was that was reviewed at the last meeting based on option B, considered closing 8 Corners and building a new K through 3 at 676 students. And so, and that total is 135, almost 136 million for that. And then if we were to look at that version 2 based on option A, that enrollment for that new K through 3 school comes down to 552 students. The total is 146.1 million for that. So looking at these collectively, the alternative options, this is based on option A, the hybrid. So we have the AB hybrid for based on option A is 112.6. The version 1 is 107, and the version 2 is 146. So that gives you some comparison of the alternatives based on option A. And so now we're going to look at what those look like based on option B, which the hybrid AB is 121 million. The version 1 alternative is 104 million, and the version 2 alternative is 135.9 million, 136. And then we did show the option B original with the 2 middle school options that we're looking at as well for comparison to those 2 costs. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Joey.
Thanks. So I think we'll just open it up for questions. either for Harriman or comments on the survey results.
One comment on the survey. I hadn't really noticed the low number of people asking questions on, I forget which option you had, but but regardless, I don't know if you looked at all of them. I just did a quick perusal and all of them from A to B, from benefits to disadvantages or concerns. The number of people answering dropped a couple of percent. And for all of them, it dropped off significantly on questions. So people may just not have had questions, but it was consistent across all of them, just so there wasn't any concern that a particular option had that. Thanks.
Any other? I'll throw one out regarding the survey. I had a hard time, hearing what all the different groups found, and then, as I read through the results over the weekend, I had a hard time finding anything really conclusive. There's certainly some things that jump out, but then there's contradictions in the results as well, and so I'm certainly gonna try to spend some more time in the survey between now and the 24th, trying to understand what it really means. I don't know if others in the room found that there was some concrete things they could pull out, and if so, I'd love to hear what those are, because I didn't. There were certainly some strong themes around consolidation in neighborhood schools, but other than that, I didn't find a lot conclusive. Ava?
Noticed a few times mentioned specifically in C, but that is an option for the school that they like nothing to do with the Downs, absolutely nothing to do with the Downs. So, I mean, we talked about location, but I think it's the sooner the better. I mean, on the location committee or whatever we're calling it, but the sooner the better that we can kind of start the narrative that we're not looking in that vicinity. I think that will put a lot of people at ease and maybe become more amicable to set options that have new school.
I would just add that I guess one thing that I walked away with from the survey is that there is a large number of people in this community who haven't made any decision yet, right? When you saw people say, I don't know, or I prefer not to answer, and that number was above 30% for each of the options.
Yeah.
That actually makes me hopeful, because what that says is that there's a large contingent of our community who is still the jury's still out. They're looking for more information to help them assess where they want to be, or what their opinion is. And I think that behooves us to keep that in mind as a committee when we think about the value of communicating and how we draw people into the conversation.
And people are very clear about what they want to know about, which is how much is it going to cost and where is it going to be?
Yeah.
Right? What did you say? 74% of people are asking those questions. I think I made a table where I compared key measures across the options, and it seems like some of the negatives are what jump out more. But just the no benefits, I don't like it. And those were higher for the consolidated and for the new 1-3 and the new 2-3. And that was really the biggest theme I saw. Just that. I mean, people definitely still seem to feel more positive about it. As a concept, they're attached to the idea. You just need to know that.
I almost would disagree. I almost felt like this survey really showed me that a lot of people haven't made up their mind.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying really the numbers that jumped out, if you compare across the options, were the no benefits, I don't like it. And the ones that have the highest scores, I mean, not surprisingly based on the last survey.
Yeah.
The ones that had the highest negatives, I don't like it, were C, D, and G.
Yeah, and I haven't compared those exact numbers,
Yeah.
but I know that was the top for B as well.
Yeah, I mean, A had the lowest no benefits at 13. B had 19%, C 23%, or 25. D 27% don't like, and G 32%.
So looking through the survey, and we discussed it briefly in our group, there were some things that weren't necessarily surprising to people. Perhaps not having made up their minds, having questions about cost, about location of any new construction. One thing I noticed, you can look and see what the data tells you, but sometimes it's what you don't see in the data. And what I didn't see was real concrete support for a true consolidated option. Looking through the various questions, whether it was specific to our option that we were looking at, whether it was general questions surrounding number 2, there just didn't seem to be a real strong base of support for a true consolidated option.
This is true when you go back to the ranking, of course, those 10 questions and people were prioritizing. And, the 3 neighborhood schools came in at a median of 7. And adding a 4th school came in, I think the median was 5, and consolidated schools 2.
Yeah.
I mean, those, just have to figure out what that means for us.
Sue?
Yeah, I tried to read through a lot of the raw data for, in those sections that, the big ones, like 10 and 11. And I was surprised, I mean, a couple of things popped out. One is about keeping grade 6 at the middle school. And that people seem to, I mean, there's a group of people who think that grade 6 belongs in the middle school. And however, they seem to be happy that the kids are in portables, like they're off on their own, so they're not constantly mixed with the 7th and 8th graders. And also, it seems there were a lot of requests that it's important that we survey the teachers and get their opinions in a separate survey, just to, they're the experts on this. And that seemed like there were a number of teachers who don't want to move. If maybe they're 6th grade teachers, they don't want to go back to elementary school, is kind of what came, at least. And this is anecdotal stuff that just hit me. And also that the bus drop-offs, like, these kids should be taking the bus. And if there's so much traffic and congestion, too bad, like, put the kids on the bus. And we shouldn't put a lot of time and energy and money in redesigning so that the parent drop-off is better. Let's see. Also, questions about the enrollment numbers, just being sure that that we are sure of our enrollment numbers, that enrollment is decreasing everywhere else, and why are we different? Tons of comments though about keeping the neighborhood schools, finding a way to plan for pre-K, and against a large school with hundreds of kids. So. A lot of support also, like, there were numerous comments about what happened to the K-5 option. That there were quite a few, comments that it disappeared, but that was what I wanted. Totally read it, huh?
Yeah.
Bring it back.
One of the things, I think I heard from, you guys called it out really well over here. There seems to be enough contradiction in the results that perhaps the community doesn't understand all the options well enough. And so as we go forward from our challenge is to be clearer in what we're proposing and what these options really are, right? So we've got to work through that going forward. How do we put this in front of the public in ways that they can digest it better?
I think once we have fewer options,
Yeah.
it's gonna be so,
Yeah.
so much easier. I mean, people really want to understand them.
Yeah.
You know, and they really want to know what they're gonna cost.
Jenna?
I think too, whether it be the next community forum or whatever way we're expressing that out, assuming we might have two options, one be a neighborhood, one be consolidated school. Of course, there's gonna be people that are gonna be neighborhood no matter what, but I think we just need to be really clear too on kind of the things you would potentially be losing, like playground space. Are we able to get all the special needs in all the schools? Like, I just want to make sure, there's not, like I said, there's gonna be people that are gonna vote that 100%, but I want to make sure that we're being really transparent with people on, like the concessions that we potentially need to make if we're going those options, because I just want to make sure people are going eyes wide open too of like, they might love neighborhood, but the playground part could be a deal breaker, or, you know, there could be something that's a deal breaker that isn't super clear if you're not in this process the way that we are, but I just want to make sure we're being clear on kind of the pros and cons of each option.
So just to piggyback on that, one thing that I noticed was the number of people who expressed support for keeping the 3 existing buildings and really did not want to consider a 4th school or expanding beyond having those 3 buildings. And I think the challenge with that is exactly what you're speaking to, which is people have, it is concerning to me that potentially people have this perception that we can renovate these 3 schools to get everything that we are needing and hoping that these schools will be. And people are not realizing that it's not as simple as just saying renovate the 3 existing neighborhood schools. And so I think we have some education components definitely that I think that that's one of the things that jumped out to me, the way people answered the questions about option A and then option B. I think that's where I saw that.
I'd probably say to piggyback on the last 2 comments, and I've already said this and I'm repeating myself, but I think it would be the best way to actually demonstrate that sort of duality between a consolidated school and whatever other ones would be to really spend most of our time talking about which of the neighborhood schools we want to pick and put that up against a consolidated school. I mean, I think even I am convinced that a consolidated school,
What do you mean?
well, for our 2 options, when we narrow it down
When
to
you
2.
say pick which neighborhood school and put it up against?
So we've got 4 options, right? Or five.
You
So,
mean option A or option B?
Or hybrid.
or hybrid. Yeah, I think one of the neighborhood schools / hybrid
Sorry,
and put that up against a consolidated school.
gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying put the renovations of one of our schools up against the
Yeah.
consolidated school so people could see, and I was not.
Yeah,
following.
no, that's
But I
fine.
got you.
I'll say
I
it one
got
more
you.
time though, like, just like when I think the work needs to be done here is the best way to really demonstrate what you're getting, what the trade-offs here is to pick one of these other 4 options and put that up against a consolidated.
Sorry, Fred, you're saying for when we narrow down to 2 options?
Yeah.
So you're kind of defaulting that consolidated should be one of those options?
I do, yeah, I do. I honestly think that no matter who I talk to, whether it's people in this room or it's the school board that I just heard on the school board meeting or people out in the public, it's like one or the other. It's like the general consensus seems to be that the most efficient model is to do a consolidated school. And then there's the neighborhood option, and a lot of people want to have their neighborhood school, and we've got options here that have elements of that. And I think it's our duty, I guess what I'm trying to do is direct us to that because we've done enough talking about it.
I think I agree with most of what you're saying with that, but I think, and maybe this is what we have to come to, and maybe we've done enough talking, that those are, to me, the 2 most decided voting blocks are people who want neighborhood schools and people who want low cost and efficient operating costs. And so and I don't know how to get around it, but I think that you risk by jumping to that stage too early, I think you risk then, those are the people to me that are most decided in this room, in the survey, and that you risk alienating one of the two biggest percentages of people who know which way they would vote and what they want. If neighborhood people, neighborhood fans, if we all suggest and put up a consolidated school, some of them will vote for the consolidated school. They want a change. So I don't mean to make it sound like a simple choice, but I worry about not hashing that out a little bit more.
I think Rob has a comment online too.
Yeah, Rob?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I was really interested in the findings of the AB hybrid based on option A. There were a couple of things that emerged that I thought were actually pretty compelling. One thing was a big improvement in the distribution of enrollment between the three schools. They're much more evenly distributed, and the costs came down quite a bit. So I guess I know, Fred, you're the one who kind of has put that on the table and been testing that a little bit. I'm interested in your perspective on that, but also it seems to me that it's kind of emerging as a pretty compelling option that is addressing a number of these different findings from the survey as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think it's a really unique kind of compromise solution. I like that. That's my thoughts personally. I think it's something we should continue to kind of vet against the other options as well. I don't know, other thoughts on the hybrid solution? Yep.
Yeah, when I look at the enrollment at both Blue Point and Eight Corners, those enrollments are are still higher than what we are today. So we still, we are still going to be doing additions on those schools, and we are still going to be losing playgrounds. I mean, that's the forever issue with those, even though Pleasant Hill will be closed, by keeping the new school at only 300 students. You've got to keep the enrollments pretty high at the other two. And it really makes those schools, after watching that meeting, the Board of Ed meeting, and hearing people talk about how important the outdoor space is, it's still going to be limited.
Can I ask Harriman a quick question? So I'm quickly reviewing this again, and the slide that you're on has the 300 at the new K2. If you click 2 slides later, still that option, still based on option A.
This is different. So these 4, the version 1 and version 2, those came from a comment in the survey.
Okay, so this is not hybrid.
So
Okay,
this is not
thank
the
you.
hybrid AB.
Okay,
So
sorry.
it's sort of 6 options altogether.
But these alternative survey inputs version 1, essentially these are
It's a variation of it where it involves 8 corners instead of.
a larger expansion at Eight Corners than anywhere else. Instead of closing a school and building one big school, we do a large expansion at Eight Corners, right?
And then version 2 of that is closing 8 corners and building a new one.
Yeah.
And version 1 is
So
on
it's
their property,
basically-
correct?
yeah. And the AB, correct me if I'm wrong, go back, is with Pleasant Hill. Big one.
Version 1.
Go back to AB.
Yeah, AB, yeah, AB wasn't help.
Yeah. So it's either exploring this with Pleasant Hill or exploring it with Eight.
With 8 corners expanding, yeah, larger.
So we're at time here for public comment. I did just, before we close out this discussion, I do think we owe them an answer as to whether or not they need to put resources towards this idea of a K2 consolidated school. I was actually going to propose it today with a little bit of a variation of this, because I thought if you did a K2 consolidated school, so this was kind of taking like a GD hybrid approach. but we leave, if Wentworth stays at 3.5, there's no expansion, there's no, is there any work that needs to get done at Wentworth?
Yeah, there
Still
was.
have the increased population. Right.
Okay, so, and then the middle school,
But I think we've previously been given those numbers, you can kind of plug and play.
Yeah.
Right.
With
Yeah.
middle school options, Wentworth options.
Right.
Those are interchangeable or added in or out.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah, so the question is, does the group want Harriman to bring that information forward next week?
Charlie, can you say the lineup again? K2, 3, 5, 6, 8?
yep.
Yeah. I would really be in support of that. I feel like that is another version of a compromise. And it also addresses the middle school issue. It's a smaller scale than the K3, perhaps more palatable. So if you're, did you make a motion?
No.
No.
You can though.
I also think there's so many options for neighborhood schools and everything that I think it's only fair to play out the exercise, put everything out there and see where we're at. I mean, we're considering a K 1, 3, K 1, 2, 3, kind of hopping all over the place, and I think it's only fair to vest out all the options when you still have 2 weeks to look at it and run the numbers, bring the data forward before you vote.
My concern with that, we'll get it next Monday, then we're gonna be voting on the 24th. Is that gonna give us enough time to vet all the ins and outs like we have the other concepts?
I mean, it sounds like Harriman.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna be a difficult one to model, in terms of the cost on this one, so.
It would be modeled similar to how we.
The designs will be similar to what we've already seen.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's just a matter of understanding the cost of it, and plausibility of it, right?
Right,
So to Jim's question, could that be provided
in advance of,
well in advance? I mean, I fully understand how difficult it is to get something out before a meeting, but if that could be done in a couple of days, just that one model, and then, whatever else you're working on to present.
right, yeah, because right now, I think for next week, I mean, we don't have a tremendous amount on our plates, and so I think we could explore this.
You're asking for like, oops,
Like a DG.
like this.
Like this.
DG.
Yeah.
See the data like this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine that should be.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Jim, would that allay your concerns?
If you had a
No,
table
I-
like this
I-
with the new option that we're
Right.
exploring.
If that were available before the next meeting?
Before the next meeting,
Sure.
yeah.
And then I think what we need to do in the next meeting is decide, and actually with a motion and a vote, right, of which options are we going to consider on the 24th, right? So officially, we haven't held a vote for the hybrid AB option either, right? They've just been sort of bringing us along with that one. So it's not officially an option for us right now, but we need to make those decisions next week. So kind of, let's be prepared for that. And then we'll, on the 24th is when we'll call whichever options we have. So, all right.
You want a motion on that, Charlie?
For what?
For them to keep a hybrid and what we're calling the new one?
I think it's okay, considering we're using the same kind of model for the AB option, hybrid option, where we never necessarily call the motion. I think as long as there's kind of just general consensus that Harriman's gonna present this information to us with the understanding that we do need to formally accept the proposals at some point to decide which ones are gonna be up for consideration. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so to that point, what is the process for making a hybrid AB a formal option then?
I think it's,
What do we need?
I think we just need a motion to, include AB hybrid, whatever we call it. Where are we at? G now? No, we're at.
It should just be a
No,
little bit
H,
more, it
H.
should be a little bit clearer, there seem to be a lot of different variations of that hybrid.
Right. Yes.
So do you need us to be a little bit more specific about what we're looking for that to become an option?
I think it would be a question of whether you want only one of those, or do you want two of them to be the options?
Okay. All right, I'll think about that for
I was
next.
gonna say, my recommendation, Fred, would be anybody who wants to make a case for that option to be ready next meeting to put forward like something very concrete, like your best
Okay.
ask,
All right.
right? And then put that up for a motion to accept it as the option.
Okay.
And give it a new label number.
With the understanding, right, because I actually, so we would vote to say, yep, this is an official option now, and then the following week, we may vote to eliminate it as an option. But to have it in consideration, right, at least, is procedurally, we need to do that.
Yep, that's my understanding.
Can you clarify? So one of them would be to close Pleasant Hill and build a fourth school somewhere else that incorporates Pleasant Hill, and the other one is to completely tear down and rebuild Eight Corners, or close Eight Corners, or
So,
Eight Corners.
Three-story.
so so AB is the one that closes Pleasant Hill. And then we have one version based on A, and that means that Eight Corners and Blue Point are based on the plans for A. And then one version where they're based on the plans for B. And then this one, the way it was proposed, we didn't, this came from the survey. So the way it was proposed was that Eight Corners would be,
A very large expansion. I think that,
expanded.
yeah.
To be very large in that V1.
But is that even possible? Like, on the footprint, is that really?
3 stories. It's 3 stories.
Oh my God, all right.
For K-2?
Eighth grade.
K-3, yeah. And then, again, based on A or based on B, and then the other version was to get to close Eight Corners and build it on the site.
Okay, I see.
Charlie, it looks like a hand is up so
Yes,
far
for public
away.
comment.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah, we're trying to get to public comment.
Just one final point, survey results. The biggest takeaway for me, I think, was in question 1, and then borne out again in question 2, was 60% of our community understands there's the need, and I'm not sure we had that last time.
I agree.
So that told me that our community's ready for solution discussion. We just need to be really clear what solutions we're putting in front of them. So don't whistle past that. I think that's a really important takeaway from the survey.
Yeah, thanks. All right, I gotta go to public.
Yeah,
comment.
I'm just saying, are we done after public comment?
We have executive session after that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right, because there's a hand up, we'll go online first. Jack, I see your name. If you'd like to speak?
Yeah, 2 things really. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, I think that the survey, from what I saw in the presentations today, especially the first one, and all the previous surveys and the vote, consolidation is not gonna fly, I don't think. However, that's my own opinion. Secondly, I like the AB solution that you came up with. The only thing I was concerned about was when you had the $6 million plus or minus for the site, what would happen if they knocked down Pleasant Hill School or Eight Corners, cleared the land, take out all the portables, and then build a larger school on that land? That's $6 million. I'm sure there's a cost involved, maybe $1 million, a little bit more for clearing the land. But you'd have the leftover money that you could put in for insulation and air conditioning. I think that was 3.5 million on the other quotes. That's my comment.
Thanks, Jack. Is it Marvin?
Yes, Marvin. Hi, thanks. Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road. I'm responding to an early comment in your proceeding tonight, Mr. Chair, regarding a distinction without a difference, I think, And the distinction was the SBAC 2 group is focused on many variables related to the education of our children. Let's say principally the cost being one of the new building. And the comment was made that the BOE members, Board of Ed members, take a pledge or otherwise an oath of placing the children's needs first. And I certainly understand that and respect that. However, I cannot disengage the BOE members' obligation to the children's education insofar as I think everybody agrees, should another referendum fail, we've just delayed it and needlessly in a certain way. So I think the BOE's members, particularly since they're elected officials and certainly understand what an election is about, can find their way, in your view, to the understanding that what is best in relationship to what passes at referendum this November has the best chance of passing is certainly in the children's educational interests. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well said.
Any other public comments in the room? Yep, go ahead, Matt.
Matt Garrett. I think, so the question that I have, if you add the A-B hybrid, I don't see it as adding one option. It's kind of 3 options. Because you have one version that is A, favoritive, and then you have one option that's B, favoritive. So it almost seems that you'd have to either eliminate both of them to adopt it, as opposed to adopting 3 more options when you've already eliminated 2 and you're gonna decide to eliminate more down to 2 in 2 weeks. It seems like that just makes your life more difficult. It's kind of either keep A and B or keep A, B favoritive to one or the other, not all 5 or 6 of them, whatever it is.
Matt, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's just, when you're trying to narrow stuff down, it's one thing if you add one option, but then you need to replace an option, not in supplement 2.
Yeah.
It just seems like it would make it more difficult to narrow it by that respect. So, what else? A couple other things. So if you're gonna defer the renovations to the middle school and Wentworth, right? Is that the cost reductions that go from 100 to 94 to 80 or whatever, are those just gonna get worked into the capital improvement plan? Or does that have to go to referendum again to approve the additional work? How does it work to defer that to later on? And at that point, what do you do if it fails, right? If it has to go to referendum, what do you do if it fails? Then you're stuck again. So, you know, I think that should be a consideration too. What's the model to defer this cost down the road? And then I guess the third thing, from what I took away from everybody looking at the different options in the survey results, the 2 things that stuck out are location cost. And everybody seems to say, well, what can we do to get the public to wrap their heads around these options and the benefits and the downfalls? Put a money option, put a money number to it. 70 million, 150 million, it doesn't matter what it is, when you're that high, you might as well be on Mars for somebody to wrap their head around how much this actually costs. So I think you said last week you went from $200 to $400 tax increase on the last survey as to how you got from that range, 70 to 100. So could you put in the next survey, option A, average tax increase, $200 per household? And if you wanted to figure it out more finite than that, it adds 50 cents to the mill rate per thousand. So if you want to calculate exactly how much it is, if your house is $400,000, it's going to cost you $200 a year. Then somebody has an idea as to how much this is actually going to cost them. It's a tangible item that they can allocate to, okay, that's a week worth of groceries, or okay, that's an oil change in my truck, or whatever it is. There's nothing to grasp the gravity of what you're asking to do. And I think a lot of the I don't knows, the I don't care answers will turn one way or the other if they have something they can equate it to and relate to their day-to-day life. That's all.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks.
No bad.
All right, with that, before we move to adjourn, I do want to just say for the public, as we get ready to, reduce down to 2 options, we certainly welcome as much feedback as we can get. So continue to join us as you can and give us your thoughts on these options, to help us get to the right decision. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
It's a motion to adjourn to executive session, not to return to the public session.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. We're adjourned. Thanks, Matt.